Hello, leader. Are you realizing that your team is running you? And not in a good way. Does it feel like your team is calling all the shots? Now, for sure, there are specific roles that require team members to steer you back on track and away from distractions, especially if this is a blind spot of yours. The role can even include staying out in front of you in order to anticipate trends and client needs. Or it could require a team member to become an expert in a skill set and then bring those skills back to the business in order to uplevel their impact on the business. I mean, after all, we don't need you to be great at everything. That's why you hired a team. But what we're going to talk about today is the situation where your team sees a clear path to always putting themselves first and the needs of the business and your clients and customers a deep low second. When this happens, we need intervention, and we need a leader who can look within herself to recognize what just happened and what role did she play in developing this kind of team culture, either knowingly or unknowingly. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Stacking Your Team podcast. This podcast is for anyone looking to strengthen their leadership skills and build a high-performing team. I'm your host, Shelli Warren. Leading people can be tough, but it's a skill we can all continue to develop. You already know that whether your workplace is big or small, people are your greatest asset and often your largest expense. That's why you take your role seriously and want to keep growing as a leader. You'll find that each episode is designed to provide practical solutions that you can apply immediately. So let's dive into today's episode with a couple of quick reminders. No one escapes team troubles, including me, and the team that got you here may not be the team that will get you there. Is your team running you? In our current hiring climate, many business owners are nervous about doing anything that may push a key team member out the door. So they're moving throughout their day lightly, trying not to ruffle any feathers, possibly avoiding giving performance feedback and letting troubling habits slide. Now, I know why you may be doing this, but it's never a good idea to turn a blind eye to what's going on with your team. Now, you've heard that no news is good news, so it shouldn't be a shocker that some people will continue to underperform, misbehave, and negatively interact with others and think that it's normal, even acceptable, and considered maybe favoritism if you do not address it. So before you know it, you've got a team culture that you never wanted. If your team culture has drifted off course and has now shifted into something unrecognizable, it's time for you to take action to correct it. You know, a survey conducted by Express Employment Professionals in early 24 revealed that 28% of Canadian employers anticipated increased employee turnover that year. That's a lot, 28%. It's such a disruption. And we all know that it's expensive to replace people. So you've got to address this issue and set aside your fear that making changes, like holding people accountable, will cause people to leave because a lot of them are already considering it. And hey, if you are smack dab in the middle of hiring, you should grab a copy of our guide, How to Position Your Role as Their Next Best Career Move. It's easy to get, it's free, and it's full of strategies to help you attract great people to come and join your team. We want to help you stack your team, even in this competitive job market. So get on over to the Stacking Your Team website and grab that free resource and see the other stuff we have waiting for you over there too. So let's talk about some of the common signs and symptoms that your team is running you. The first one is that team members choose when they work instead of meeting the standard availability expectations that were outlined in their employment contract and reinforced during onboarding. Now, this might be getting out of hand at your business. So what happened? Well, you may have offered some flexibility at times for family and health situations, and those options have creeped over into something that is just way too excessive. So you've got people switching shifts, constantly calling in sick, or even ghosting you, or requesting to work from home more than the allotted number of days per week. Now, you may have people on your payroll who are barely working the minimum number of hours, and it's impacting the whole team, who now have to reschedule everything or even cover for them. And it's likely impacting your reputation with your clients. This is an example of needing to reinforce with your team that in order to retain their employment with you, they will need to work a minimum number of hours consistently. Otherwise, it's not worthwhile to keep them on your payroll. I like to encourage my clients to set their minimum and their maximum hours of scheduled work for their team, taking into consideration what their state, province, or territory guidelines are. This then needs to be shared right across the team with an open conversation about scheduling time off and scheduled time on. You also should be making it normal to coach your team leaders about how to address the situation, including the wide variety of scenarios that can be presented to them when people want time off. I remember a team member in the past who would often call in sick last minute or cancel his shift last minute, sometimes with a day's notice. When I confronted him about it, he said he didn't think it was a big deal because there were lots of guys who wanted the overtime. Oh my goodness, he totally missed the point and also disregarded his peers' ability to plan their life. Back in my 20s, when I ran that incredibly fun music store, jeepers, I loved that job. I had a team member who was in alliance with one of my team leaders who owned the schedule. And together, they created multiple long weekend opportunities for themselves throughout the year. Taking a long-range planning view for the year to their advantage. So between the two of them, they had secured time off for every long weekend there was. When I discovered it and confronted them on it, they, of course, had to forfeit their self-centered schedule and build in parameters to make it fair for everyone. And yes, both of them didn't last long in their roles. So how did we fix this? Well, it starts by putting an end to pretending that you don't see what's happening when people are overly unavailable, or more often, they're off than they are on. And instead, set your expectations, set your boundaries, and then stick to them. The risk is that if you don't, it will look like favoritism towards a few who seemingly set their hours solely based on their preferences, rather than on a combination of preferences and needs of the business. After all, we want people to request time off, for sure, in advance, and we want them to enjoy their time away. But don't get caught trying to meet the demands of your client waitlist or unmet milestones for client projects because your team members are not at work. I see you wanting to step in and cover for them. And sometimes that is exactly what needs to happen, right? You need to put client services back on track when this is happening, but you cannot be the backstop for your team. Another sign that your team is running you is that people are ditching meetings. Now, this is a sign that, there's likely a few things going on here. So first, your meetings could be boring. Or second, your team doesn't see any value in being there. Or thirdly, and this one's a doozy, they don't think it really matters that they skip it. Now, you may even have team members covering for each other's absences and bringing each other up to speed on anything interesting that happened afterwards. And it's true, one of the first things I do with my clients is I look at their calendars and I start to pull together a plan for them to get out of so many meetings. And this is where the risk is, right? So like if you're not in the meeting and you don't know who's all attending, you don't know who's all skipping it. So here's what we do. We put a small but mighty leadership team into place who leads the meetings, right? They're also leading people, processes, and profit centers, and they're freeing that business owner up to do more of what only she can do. Now, I also get it that most people despise going to meetings, but you can make them more enjoyable, productive, and worthwhile. And if you're one of those leaders who hates meetings, and if your behavior during the meeting screams, "Get me out of here," you're projecting this onto everyone else. Or if you're that kind of person who will monopolize a meeting, focusing on only what's important to you, you could be making your team feel that everything is all about you, and your team sees what you're doing and they'll look to skip it every chance they get. But here's the facts. Meetings are necessary. It's how we lead a group of people. It's how we eliminate confusion and offer clarity. It's also where we can hear everyone's point of view. So how do we fix this? By setting expectations with all of your team, including a reminder and a demonstration of the intention of the meeting, and holding the guideline that only people who are required to be at the meeting will be invited to attend the meeting. Stop inviting people to meetings that really don't need to be there. I also want to encourage you to consider how you and your leadership team are hosting your meetings. Are you asking for feedback? Are you mixing up who's leading the agenda, who's taking notes, or who's doing the follow-through? Look, you've got to make your meetings shorter and super productive so that your team feels that it really was time well spent instead of a drag. Another sign that your team is running you is that it's become normal to miss deadlines and expectations. So tasks that you thought were someone's responsibility end up being no one's responsibility. The underlying issue here is that if someone decides that they don't particularly like doing a task, they think that if they simply can't do it, won't do it, and then just don't do it, someone else will take care of it. Often, it's you who steps in to save the day. So consider this. When someone tells you that they can't do it, does this mean that they haven't been trained and qualified to do the task well, and that there might be some fear about making mistakes? And when someone tells you they won't do it, does that mean they have a poor attitude towards the work? Are they the type of person who's not willing to roll up their sleeves and do whatever it takes? Is there a safety concern? Or do they not understand their core roles and core skills are what long-term employment opportunities and promotions are built on? Is it time for them to go? And when someone just doesn't do it, again, is this because of a poor attitude, or are they confused and resisting a certain task on their work plan? Did someone forget to tell them everything that they were supposed to be doing that was associated with their role? So how do we fix it? Role modeling helps. So does straight up coaching conversations to find out what that person is thinking and why are they not compelled to deliver on what's being asked of them. This reminds me of a time I realized that a team member of mine was about to miss a significant milestone deliverable on a project. When I asked him about it, he said, "I thought the date was a guideline, not a set in stone thing." Good grief. I had to stop and think to myself, have I been dismissive? Have I been talking too loosely about dates? Where have I been misguiding my team about milestone markers and the reason why we have them in the first place? So here's the thing. When the leader abdicates their authority or is perceived as being disengaged or at best inconsistent in their leadership presence, two things can happen. One, without a leadership team in place, the lower performing team members can form an alliance and begin to influence the team with bad habits, entitlements, even fraud in terms of padding their hours of work and falsifying their timesheets. The other thing that can happen without a leadership team in place is that people who want to uphold the mission of your business and care about it will step up and start to steer the team forward with or without your alignment. If nothing changes in terms of your level of support as they take on this additional leadership responsibility, they could also come a time where they start brushing off their LinkedIn profile, getting ready to leave. So let's ensure neither of these scenarios come to life in your business. Take a hard look at the behaviors on your team that are negatively impacting your team culture and decide to do something about it. Set some new expectations, hold people accountable, acknowledge the drift, and encourage people when you see them creating new habits and meeting your standards. Make it normal to inspect what you inspect by seeing your team in action. Consider putting a small but mighty leadership team in place to help guide your team. Set the daily direction and offer coaching to your team. I'm here to help you do that. You can turn these bad habits around when you describe, demonstrate, and then reward the behaviors you truly want everyone to experience on your team. Hey, did you know that I host a free live workshop every single month? Each session is packed with game-changing insights to help you grow and lead with confidence. And people tell us our workbooks are fantastic. Want to know when the next one is and what we'll be diving into? Subscribe to our weekly newsletter and you'll always be in the loop. This could be the most valuable hour you've invested in yourself in a very long time. Everything we do at Stacking Your Team is designed to help you strengthen your leadership skills and build a high-performing team. So I will see you on Instagram or LinkedIn. And of course, I'll be right here with you next week to join you as you step into expanding your leadership skills even further. See you then.